Thomas felt his bones stretch and crack as his arms extended beyond their natural length. Fingertips scraping the ceiling while his torso remained unchanged. The living room furniture began orbiting around him in lazy circles, chairs and coffee tables suspended 3 feet off the ground, rotating counterclockwise with mechanical precision. Blood seeped through the wallpaper in perfect geometric patterns, forming symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Daddy, why are you so tall?" 6-year-old Kevin asked from the couch, his small hand resting on the shoulder of a good guy doll with orange hair and blue overalls. The doll's plastic eyes tracked Thomas's movement across the room. Thomas tried to bend down, but his elongated limbs wouldn't cooperate. Joints locked at impossible angles. The floating furniture picked up speed, spinning faster until the wood grain blurred. More blood pooled on the hardwood floor, spreading in perfect concentric circles that pulsed with each beat of Thomas's racing heart. "Kevin, get away from that thing," Thomas managed, his voice distorted by the unnatural configuration of his throat and chest cavity. "But Chucky wants to play." Kevin's fingers traced the doll's striped shirt. "He told me secrets about you." The walls stopped bleeding. The furniture crashed to the floor with deafening thuds. Thomas's body snapped back to normal proportions so violently he collapsed, gasping. But the doll remained exactly where it was. Plastic smile, never wavering. Thomas had found Kevin 3 weeks ago in the basement of their foreclosed home, talking to empty air about a new friend. The bank had given them 30 days to vacate. Thomas had been searching for anything valuable to sell when he heard his son's voice echoing through the concrete foundation, having a full conversation with someone who wasn't there. Now that same someone sat on their temporary couch in this cramped apartment, wearing the face of a mass-produced toy. "What secrets?" Thomas asked, crawling toward the couch on hands and knees. Kevin whispered something to the doll, then nodded solemnly. "Chucky knows about the night Mommy went away. He knows what you did with the car keys." Thomas's blood turned to ice. He had hidden Elizabeth's keys the night she tried to leave, desperate to make her stay and work things out. She had been drinking, threatening to drive to her mother's house with Kevin in the back seat. Thomas had taken the keys to protect them both. Elizabeth had screamed at him, called him controlling, possessive. She had stormed out on foot and never came back. Only Kevin had been awake that night. Only Kevin had seen. "He's lying," Thomas whispered. The doll's head turned 30 degrees to the right with a soft plastic click. Its mouth didn't move, but Kevin spoke in a voice that wasn't quite his own. "Elizabeth called you 17 times from the payphone outside McGrady's bar. You let it ring." Thomas lunged forward and grabbed the doll, plastic limbs, surprisingly heavy in his hands. The orange hair felt real between his fingers, soft and slightly greasy. Kevin started crying, reaching for his toy. "Give him back. Chucky doesn't like being grabbed." Thomas ran to the kitchen and threw the doll in the garbage disposal. He flipped the switch. The grinding noise filled the apartment, but when he looked down, the disposal was empty. The doll sat on the counter beside the sink, overall spotless, smile intact. "You can't get rid of me that easy," the doll said in Kevin's voice. "I know where all the bodies are buried." Thomas spun around. Kevin stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, but his mouth wasn't moving. The words came from behind Thomas. He turned back to find the doll's plastic lips forming each syllable with mechanical precision. There are no bodies, Thomas said. Elizabeth's body's in the quarry off Route 49. You followed her there after she left the bar. You argued. She fell. She fell because she was drunk. I tried to help her. You pushed her. Kevin ran to the doll and hugged it protectively. Chucky says, you're going to hurt me too, like you hurt Mommy. Thomas knelt down, trying to separate his son from the toy, but Kevin's grip was impossibly strong. Kevin, I would never hurt you. That thing is lying. Then why did you hide Mommy's car at the bottom of Miller's Pond? Thomas released Kevin and stumbled backward. He had never told anyone about the car. After Elizabeth died, he had driven it to the deepest part of the pond and watched it sink beneath the murky water. The police assumed she had left town. Missing person, not murder. No body, no crime. But there had been a body, and Thomas had weighted it down with chains from his construction site, hidden it where no one would ever look. How do you know that? Thomas asked the doll. Chucky's head swiveled to face him directly. I've been watching your family for a long time, Thomas, waiting for the right moment to make my move. Kevin was so lonely after Mommy disappeared. He needed a friend. You're not his friend. You're some kind of monster, demon, ghost. The doll laughed, a sound like grinding gears. I'm much worse than that. I'm the truth. The apartment began to shake. Pictures fell from the walls, glass shattering across the floor. The fluorescent kitchen light flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. In the gloom, Thomas could see the doll's eyes glowing with soft blue light. Kevin, we have to leave. Now? Thomas grabbed his son's hand, but Kevin pulled away. I'm not going anywhere without Chucky. That thing is dangerous. You're dangerous, Kevin screamed. You killed Mommy, and now you want to kill me. The doll's laughter filled the apartment, echoing from every surface. Thomas realized the truth with horrible clarity. This wasn't some supernatural possession or haunted toy. Kevin had created Chucky as a coping mechanism, a way to process the trauma of losing his mother and living with her killer. The doll was just plastic and cloth, but Kevin's fractured psyche had given it terrible life, which meant Kevin knew what Thomas had done, had always known. Kevin, listen to me very carefully. I made a terrible mistake the night your mother died, but I'm still your father, and I love you. Chucky says you're going to make me disappear too. Thomas looked around the apartment, searching for some way to break through to his son. His eyes fell on a framed photo of Elizabeth, the only picture they had managed to save from the foreclosure. She was laughing, holding Kevin as a toddler, both of them covered in flour from baking cookies. Thomas picked up the photo and showed it to Kevin. Your mother loved you more than anything in the world. She would want you to be safe. Then why didn't you keep her safe? The question hit Thomas like a physical blow. He sank to his knees, finally understanding the depth of what he had taken from his son. Not just a mother, but innocence, security, the ability to trust the one person who was supposed to protect him above all others. You're right, Thomas whispered. I failed her. I failed you. And I can't take that back. Kevin's grip on the doll loosened slightly. Chucky says, you're lying again. Maybe I am. But I'm going to tell you the truth about that night. And then you can decide what to do. Thomas sat cross-legged on the floor, putting himself at Kevin's eye level. The doll watched with plastic patience as Thomas confessed everything. The fight, the hidden keys, the frantic drive to the quarry, finding Elizabeth's broken body at the bottom of the cliff. The moment of panic, when he decided to hide the evidence instead of calling for help. "I was scared they would blame me," Thomas said. "I was scared they would take you away. So I covered it up, and I've been lying to everyone ever since, including myself." Kevin listened without interruption, the doll silent in his arms. When Thomas finished, the apartment felt different somehow. Lighter. The oppressive weight of 3 years' worth of secrets had finally lifted. "Are you going to turn yourself in?" Kevin asked. Thomas nodded. "First thing tomorrow morning. Your Aunt Patricia can take care of you while I'm in prison." Kevin looked down at the doll in his arms, then back at his father. "Chucky says he's not needed anymore." Thomas reached out slowly and touched the doll's plastic cheek. Just a toy. Nothing more than molded features and synthetic hair. But for Kevin, it had been a repository for all the anger and fear and confusion that comes with losing everything you trust. "Can I keep him?" Kevin asked. "Even if he's not magic?" "Of course." Kevin hugged the doll one more time, then set it carefully on the couch. "I think I want to call Aunt Patricia now." As Thomas dialed the number, he noticed something had changed. The doll's expression seemed different somehow, less malevolent, more like what it had always been. A child's toy, waiting patiently to be played with again. But when Patricia arrived an hour later to collect Kevin, she paused at the threshold and stared at the couch where Chucky sat. "That's an interesting doll," she said carefully. "Where did it come from?" Thomas looked where she was pointing. The good guy doll sat exactly where Kevin had left it, but something was wrong. The overalls were pristine blue, not faded from years of play. The orange hair was perfectly styled, as if fresh from the factory. Most disturbing of all, the doll was smiling. Not the fixed plastic grin Thomas remembered, but a genuine expression of satisfaction. "I don't know," Thomas admitted. "Kevin found it somewhere." Patricia knelt down and examined the doll more closely. On the back of its neck, barely visible beneath the collar, was a small burned mark in the shape of a cross. Her face went pale. "Thomas, there's something you should know about dolls like this, about what can happen when a child's trauma becomes too strong, too focused." She trailed off, glancing nervously at Kevin, who was packing his few belongings in the bedroom. "What are you talking about?" "Some things are better left undisturbed. But if that doll ever starts talking when Kevin's not around, you call me immediately. Promise me." Thomas promised, though he didn't understand why. 2 days later, after Kevin had settled into Patricia's house across town, Thomas sat in the empty apartment waiting for the police to arrive. He had called them that morning and confessed to Elizabeth's murder. They would be there soon to arrest him. The Chucky doll sat on the couch where Kevin had left it, plastic eyes reflecting the late afternoon sunlight. Thomas found himself staring at it, remembering his son's words. "He told me secrets about you." Maybe Kevin's imagination had been more powerful than Thomas realized. Maybe guilt and fear could manifest in ways that seemed impossible. Or maybe some toys were never meant to be just toys. The doll's head turned slightly, tracking Thomas's movement across the room. "Don't worry," it said in a voice that was no longer Kevin's. "I'll be waiting when you get out." Thomas closed his eyes and waited for the police to come. Outside, thunder rolled across the darkening sky, promising a storm that might wash away some of the stains on his soul. But not all of them. Some stains were permanent, and some friends never say goodbye. 6 months later, Thomas sat in his prison cell, staring at the photograph Patricia had brought during visiting hours. Kevin smiled back at him from the glossy surface, standing in Patricia's backyard next to a swing set. But Thomas's attention focused on what sat partially visible in the background. Orange hair and blue overalls, propped against the porch railing. "He's doing better," Patricia had said during the visit. "Sleeping through the night now. Making friends at school." Thomas had wanted to ask about the doll, but something in Patricia's carefully neutral expression warned him away from the subject. Now, alone in his cell, Thomas understood why she had been so cautious. The photograph began to change as he watched, Kevin's smile fading until his expression matched the hollow look he'd worn for months after Elizabeth's death. The Chucky doll in the background seemed to shift positions, moving closer to Kevin's shoulder. Thomas blinked hard and looked again. The photograph showed exactly what it had before: a happy child on a sunny day. But the feeling of wrongness lingered. His cellmate, a thin man named Anthony, who rarely spoke, glanced over from his bunk. "Bad dreams again?" Something like that. Anthony sat up, studying Thomas with unusual intensity. "You got kids on the outside?" Thomas nodded, unsure why he was sharing personal information with someone he barely knew. "Kids are sensitive," Anthony said slowly. "They pick up on things adults miss. Sometimes that's a gift, sometimes it's a curse." He paused, scratching at a scar on his forearm. "My little girl had an imaginary friend once. Called him Mr. Shadow. Used to tell me all sorts of things she shouldn't have known." Thomas felt ice forming in his stomach. "What kind of things?" "Where I hid my stash. Names of people I'd hurt. Details about jobs I'd pulled years before she was born." Anthony's voice dropped to a whisper. "Kids make powerful conduits when they're scared enough, desperate enough. The dead find it easy to speak through them." The photograph trembled in Thomas's hands. Kevin's face seemed to flicker between happiness and terror, two expressions superimposed like double-exposed film. "You're saying the doll was real?" Anthony shrugged. "Real, not real, doesn't matter much, does it? If it could hurt people, if it knew things it shouldn't know, then it was real enough." He lay back down on his bunk. "Question is, what's it want now that you're locked up?" Thomas spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, Anthony's words echoing in his mind. When morning came, he called Patricia from the prison payphone. "Is Kevin okay?" he asked without preamble. Long pause. "He's been having some difficulties." "What kind of difficulties?" "He talks to that doll sometimes, has full conversations, and Thomas, sometimes it talks back." Thomas gripped the phone so tightly, his knuckles went white. "What does it say?" "It asks about you. Wants to know when you're coming home." "Kevin keeps telling it you're never coming home, but..." Patricia's voice broke slightly. "But yesterday I heard it laugh." And Thomas, "Kevin was at school when I heard it." The line went quiet except for the sound of Patricia's shallow breathing. "There's something else," she continued. "I found something in Kevin's room." A small wooden box buried under his toys. Inside were pictures of Elizabeth, taken after she died. Pictures that shouldn't exist. Thomas felt the world tilt sideways. That's impossible. The doll was sitting right next to the box when I found it, almost like it was guarding something precious. The automated voice cut in, warning them their time was almost up. Thomas spoke quickly. "Burn it. Burn the doll and everything else. I tried. The plastic won't catch fire. It just sits there in the flames is fine smiling. The line went dead. That night, Thomas dreamed of Kevin's voice calling to him across an impossible distance, begging him to come home and make the bad friend go away. When he woke, he found a child's drawing slipped under his cell door. A crayon picture of a family, man, woman, child, an orange-haired doll, standing together in front of a house that looked suspiciously like the home they'd lost to foreclosure. At the bottom, in Kevin's careful handwriting, Chucky says we can all be together again soon. Thomas crumpled the drawing, but when he looked down at his hands, it had become a photograph. Elizabeth smiled up at him, very much alive, her arms wrapped protectively around Kevin. Behind them both, barely visible in the shadows, stood a figure in blue overalls. Some friends, Thomas realized, never honored the boundaries between life and death. And some promises were too terrible to break.